What's up, and welcome in. This is a great start to the podcast. And welcome in to Fantasy Baseball today on June 26th. Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, the Orioles are finally calling up one of their big prospects. Elly De La Cruz is amazing, waiver wire moves, and much more. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, I apologize because I sound terrible. Download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. I went out to a concert on Friday, and for some reason, I thought it was a great idea to also do karaoke this weekend. Narrator, it was not a good idea. Chris, I need some advice here, man. I know you're like the concert goer. What do I do?
I don't know, because I went to a concert on Friday night as well. It was a solo acoustic show, so not exactly the same kind of screaming and yeah whatever, but I don't know, some tea, some honey, I don't know, some cough drops.
Oh gosh, I tried.
A warm bath.
Oh man,
I know I'm no help here, because I was asking you before the show. You were telling me about this before the show, and I go, so I'm not much of a concert goer, but I always hear this. People say I have no voice because I was at a concert. You weren't actually putting on the concert, right? You weren't the one saying. How are people constantly?
You're screaming along, you know. It's like a hardcore kind of band, right? Like a screamo maybe would be what you would classify them as. You saw Avenged Sevenfold, right?
Yes. So it was a metal show, and
and so you're yelling, you're singing along, you're having a good time, and that'll happen.
Scott, let's unplug the mic and plug it back in, because your audio is like
incredible start to the show, guys.
Yeah, we're off to a rousing start here. Anyway, the big news from the weekend is that the Orioles. Are we good, Scott?
You should have.
I don't know. He's asked me.
Sounds good. You sounded perfect before we started, and then
I probably need to order a new one of these cables because it has a short in it somewhere. That's my theory.
Let's talk about baseball. Orioles prospect Jordan Westburg is getting called up on Monday, the 30th overall pick back in 2020. He is 24 years old, and this season down in the minors, he was batting .295 with 18 homers, 6 steals, a .939 OPS. He is 24% rostered, shortstop eligible on CBS, but also could play third base. He's played a little bit at second and in the outfield this season as well. Scott, what do we need to know about Jordan Westburg? Is he a must-add in all formats?
Well, I hesitate, I guess, with the shallower formats, the head-to-head lineups where you only start 9 hitters, only one shortstop, one second baseman. Is everybody in that league going to need Jordan Westburg? Probably not. But I'd venture to say somebody in that league could use Jordan Westburg. And of course, if you get into the roto leagues with the extra middle infield spot, then yes, you should pick up Jordan Westburg, who has had a very productive season. I don't know. Did you give the stats, Frank?
Yes, sir.
You gave the stats. Very productive season. He was pretty low in my top 100 coming into the year. I think he was in the back 20 of the top 100. But I had concerns at that point. Jordan Westburg, also hit for plenty of power between double and triple A last year, 27 home runs. I had concerns at that point. He had pretty extreme pull tendencies. It wasn't clear exactly how much natural power, how much raw power he had, just because he hit 27 home runs. And obviously, it's a pretty punishing park he's entering into for a right-handed power hitter. Camden Yards has become that since they moved back the fences. But things look a little rosier now for a couple reasons. Not just that he's had a productive year at AAA, but we have data now, StatCast data from his time at AAA, and they show a lot of raw power there. The exit velocity readings are very good. They're not Elly De La Cruz or anything, but they make Jordan Westburg out to be like a legitimate power hitter. And two, he's become much more all fields minded this year, spreading the ball all over the field a lot more than he did last year, which probably helps account for the .295 batting average that he's had at AAA. The strikeout rate, a little on the high side. And just as a general rule, I've been more cautious in my approach to prospect call-ups this year. for the most part, that's paid off because a lot of them have underwhelmed us. Elly De La Cruz was a big exception, but I was also pretty gaga about Elly De La Cruz when he got called up. So that was a good call. Yeah. So I would say, pick him up if you need middle infield help. Hope for the best, and hopefully he plays a lot. He's gotten exposure to second and third base. I imagine he'll play those positions more often than his natural shortstop because Jorge Mateo is such a good defender at shortstop, and Westburg, from what I understand, is not such a good defender. But that'll just give him triple eligibility, and that'll make him more useful too.
Again, that is Jordan Westburg, one of the top prospects in the Orioles organization. One thing that stood out to me that does worry me a little bit is his swinging strike rate was 13.9% in the minors this year. So just some concerns that maybe the strikeout rate can push like 25-30% in the majors.
To color that even more, or just to add to what both of you are saying, 91.5 mile per hour average exit velocity so far this season. That's 91st percentile. Max exit velocity, 110.2 miles per hour. That's 63rd percentile. These are for percentile rankings at AAA. So, the raw power a little less impressive at the max end, but should still play, like Scott said. But the big concerns here are zone contact rate, 79.1%. That's 19th percentile amongst AAA hitters. Out of zone contact percentage, 46.8%, 17th percentile. So it's less the swing decisions and more what happens when he swings, which is a little more concerning for me, I think, than I guess both would be concerning, swinging at bad pitches and swinging and missing on those, but the in-zone contact rate particularly I find concerning just because I feel like that's something that's like fouled Joe Adele, to name one example. Something that's something I'm trying to pay more and more attention to when it comes to top prospects, because to overcome a flaw like that, you really need to have outlier skills or tools, I guess. And, Westburg seems to have good but not great tools. So that's the thing I'm going to be keeping an eye on moving forward. Whiff rate overall, 30.2%. That's in the 22nd percentile among AAA players. So the swing and miss is the biggest concern here.
Scott, would you take Jordan Westburg over either of Royce Lewis or Ezekiel Duran? That was a question that I kept getting on Sunday.
I don't think I would.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with the way Royce Lewis is heated up now. And last week we were talking about him and just, how often he was sitting for the Twins. He started 6 straight games. So he's picking it up at the plate like I thought he would. And they're playing him more often. So I don't really see how Westburg is going to outperform that. Who knows what will actually happen, but that doesn't seem like the most likely scenario for Westburg.
I had one league run waivers where Westburg was available so far, and he went for $52 out of a $1,000 budget. That was in my 12-team Tout Wars head-to-head points league. Chris, does that sound right around this point in the season, like 5 to 10-ish% on Westburg?
Yeah, I don't think he's someone that I want to break the bank for, but 158 games at AAA over 2 seasons, 283 average, 36 homers, 15 steals. There's clear upside here. So I don't want to say I'm not interested in him at all. It's just not necessarily someone I'm beating the door down to add.
All right. Again, that is Jordan Westburg getting called up on Monday by the Baltimore Orioles. Let's get into the rest of the weekend.
That ball had a family!
That ball had a family. Can we just quickly acknowledge Elly De La Cruz and what he did on Friday? 4 for 5 with a cycle in his 15th career game, the first cycle for Reds player since 1989. And the cherry on top, he added 2 more steals this weekend. So he is just electrifying, really fun to watch. Yes, there's been a little bit of up and down with the strikeouts. I get that. Lots of ground balls, but he's amazing.
Strikeout rate's down to 27%. It's not even that. I don't know. It's one of those things where there are things to be a little concerned about. He's got a 460 WOBA or something. 449. His expected WOBA is 331. Okay, but expected batting average is 277. That'll play. I'm not sure he can keep this up, but he's a pretty remarkable talent. And I don't know. Are we? We're probably not going to talk about him. He's probably not going to become a first round pick next year, but like, he's got the skills for it.
Yeah, he definitely has the skills to be,
and he's not as overwhelmed as we worried he might be.
And the kinds of feedback I'm getting on Twitter about Elly De La Cruz makes it sound like people are valuing him almost to the level of a first rounder already. So, usually when people say, hey, should I trade Elly De La Cruz for this? Or, hey, somebody offered me this for Elly De La Cruz. I'm saying, yeah. I mean, like, I think Elly De La Cruz is great. I moved him into my top 10 shortstops the day he got called up, and he seems to be living up to that. And I do think he has the potential to be a first round pick in fantasy someday, but it does seem like we've kind of reached a level of, people are going crazy for him, and so if you're able to take advantage of that, like if you can trade, like somebody was saying, Shane McClanahan, they were able to get for him, or I can't even think of all the examples, but if that's the level of player that Elly De La Cruz could get for you, okay, then go for it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean I'm saying, oh, you need to sell high on Elly De La Cruz, because I don't want people to hear that and think, oh, I better get rid of him before he collapses. I don't think he's going to collapse. I just don't think he's quite up to the level of a first rounder yet. So if that's the kind of return you can get, go for it.
And to kind of circle back to what we were talking about with Jordan Westburg, Elly De La Cruz in zone contact rate is right around 81% at the major league level, which is fine. It's not great, but like, that's workable. That's actually better than I thought it would be, given, his size and his swing, the violence in his swing, I guess. So he's been, everything you could have hoped he would be, in a way that looks at least moderately sustainable.
Mm-hmm. And to answer your original question, Chris, I think if Bobby Witt Jr. was pushing a first round pick in some leagues, not that we were telling people to do that this season, then I do think Elly De La Cruz can get there for next year. But
sorry, I undersold him. He has 84.1% zone contact rate according to Fangraphs, which is like 250th out of 410, which is below average, but that's more than workable for someone with his power. So yeah, there's a ton to be excited about with Elly De La Cruz. Obviously. Yeah. You don't actually need advanced stats to know that he's exciting.
He is so fun. Let's stick with the Reds, and let's stick with you, Chris, your, oh my goodness gracious, player of the weekend.
I'm going to stick with the Reds, like you said, and go with Joey Votto, who has 3 home runs in 6 games. I think he homered twice on, was that Friday that he had a 2-homer game? And
yeah,
look, it's reasonable to be skeptical that at 39 years old, coming off a really, really disastrous season that saw him require shoulder surgery, that Joey Votto is going to contribute much. And I think his roster rate, reflects that. But we have written him off before, and he had 36 homers 2 years ago. So, I'm not saying that Joey Votto is a must add, certainly in, your 12-team points leagues or anything, but I put a few bids out there in a 14-team Roto league and a 15-team league, and I didn't get him in TGFBI. I don't know what he went for in that one, but I put in like an $18 bid, so it was a pretty low dollar bid, but it's good to see, and I'm always going to be rooting for Joey Votto. Now, he was pretty terrible in 22 games during his minor league rehab assignment, which is worth pointing out. 674 OPS at 173, 32 strikeouts and 97 plate appearances. But, he's a tinkerer. We don't know what he was down there working on, if he was really concerned about his results, but I'm glad to see him hitting.
Joey Votto, 39% rostered on CBS. And I asked Scott this question last week, Votto or Tristan Casas, who quietly has played well since the start of May, and specifically in June, Tristan Casas hitting 267 with 3 homers, 5 doubles, and an 848 OPS. One other name here as well, if you're just looking at corner infielders, Jeimer Candelario went 3 for 5 with his 10th home run on Sunday. And since the start of May is batting .275 with an OPS that's just over .850. Chris, how would you rank that group? Votto, Casas, and Candelario.
Yeah, I noticed Candelario is like 12th in the National League and wins above replacement, which is surprising. I think I would put Votto at the top of that list. Just maybe I'm hanging on to that 2021 season a bit too much, but last year's injuries, maybe that explains the struggles. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, when you're comparing boring options, to a potentially non-boring option, even if it's a low chance of being non-boring. Because you're right, Casas has turned things around, but not with it's not hitting a lot of home runs. It's whatever. I'll go Votto at the top of that list too. But I do want to continue to stash Encarnacion Strand over rostering any of those guys.
I had someone tweeted at me that Encarnacion Strand was not in the AAA lineup on Sunday, but I assume if something was going to happen, we would have heard about it already. So we'll see.
Maybe not.
Minor leaguers get days off too, guys.
Yeah, it's true. Let's go over to Scott, and we are sticking with the Reds.
Sticking with the Bats. I am going with Matt McLain. Gosh. I will get a whole sentence out with that.
We gotta restart this podcast. It's been a rough start so far.
I did really, not. Really it's been bad. Sorry. Thanks for sticking with us, folks.
When I'm at the top of my game and no one else is, you're in a rough time.
Matt McLain had a big game, much like Elly De La Cruz did earlier in the weekend. Matt McLain had a 4-hit game. In a way, more impressive than hitting for the cycle because they were all extra base hits. There was a home run, his 5th. There were 3 doubles. It brings his season slash line now to 325, 380, 542, which is very impressive. And much like he was doing at AAA prior to his call-up. And he's just a really curious player, this Matt McLain, because I keep thinking he's going to slow down at some point. We're eventually going to see that batting average slip below 300. The exit velocity reading's not impressive at all. In fact, he has a 260 expected batting average versus 325 mark, a 423 expected slug versus the 542 mark. The plate discipline hasn't good. It was great in the minors. It hasn't been good in the majors. He's striking out like 27% of the time, I think, and walking 6% of the time. Is that right, Chris? You got his page open?
Yep.
Yeah, going on memory there. So that's not like it. It doesn't seem like he should continue to produce at this level, and yet there's been no let up at all. And watching him play, you get the sense there's not going to be. He just seems like a ball player, and I know that's like boomerish baseball analysis that people are going to laugh at me for, but I don't know how to explain it other than that. I just gave you all the advanced stats, and yet he's one of those players where I don't know. I don't think he's going to hit 325. Okay, like there is going to be some regression here, but not enough that you're going to take McLain out of your lineup at any point. That's the feeling I'm getting.
I believe the term you're looking for, what the Zoomers are using, Matt McLain's got that dog in him.
There you go.
That's what we're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
I do wonder if with Matt McLain, he'll be able to kind of overcome his expected numbers because he plays half of his games in Great American Ballpark, where so far he's hit 4 of his 5 home runs. He's got a 1031 OPS at home and an 810 on the road. So strikes me as something that might be able to help Matt McLain moving forward. But yes, he has been amazing. And speaking of amazing, we had a pitcher this weekend who went into Coors Field and pitched exceptionally well. And his name is Griffin Canning. He threw 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts and 18 swinging strikes on 99 pitches. And he's got the ERA back below 4. It's right at 3.99. He's got a 1.16 whip. And over his last 6 starts, that drops to a 2.25 ERA and a near 13% swinging strike rate. He's 46% rostered. Scott, I feel like we've talked about Griffin Canning recently, but that roster rate is still pretty low at 46%. What do you think?
I understand. It's too low. It's too low. I don't think he needs to be rostered everywhere. He's been somebody that I feel like I keep putting in claims for every week, but pretty far down the priority list. So I don't end up adding him either. I'm interested by all the swinging strikes. I mean, that's the number one thing I look for at a pitcher, and he's delivering in that regard. He's also giving up hard contact. So you have kind of the push and pull of those two things tugging on you. I feel like that's the main thing Chris looks for in a pitcher is how hard is the contact that he's giving up. So, low marks for Canning in that area, high marks in terms of swinging strike rate. And lately it's been delivering results. I pointed out earlier that when this run started, he was really fading his fastball, throwing it closer to 25% of the time to allow that slider and changeup to play up. But he's been bringing the fastball back in. It hasn't affected the results. I don't know what to make of that. I think ultimately what's keeping me away is he pitches for the Angels. Yeah. And so means he's starting less frequently because they have to space out Shohei Ohtani starts.
And so relative to the other waiver wire standouts from this weekend, I would probably still rather have Kenta Maeda than him. I don't know about you guys.
I'd go Canning over Maeda.
That's I think that's. I think I'd rather have Taijuan Walker. I think there's just especially in a points league for sure.
I'd rather have Walker.
Would rather chase upside with Emmett Sheehan. Brian Bayo's still available in around 30% of leagues. I
love Bayo.
I'm a little skeptical of Bayo. I'm sure we'll talk about him a little more, but I would rather have him than Canning. But I'd rather have Canning than you say Kikuchi.
Sure.
I'd rather have Canning than Reese Olson, although he's doing some interesting things. I think he's what's Canning's roster rate? Did we say it?
46%.
That sounds right about, he sounds like the median rosterable fantasy baseball pitcher this season.
All right. Well, we will compare him to some of those other names that you just mentioned in just a little bit. One other mention of, oh my goodness gracious, this weekend, the Angels scored 25 runs in Coors Field on Saturday, which is just bananas. 6 different players in their lineup had 3 or more hits. Mike Trout went 3 for 3 with his 17th home run. Hunter Renfroe went 5 for 5 with 4 RBI. Mickey Moniak also went 5 for 5 with his 7th home run. And good old David Fletcher is back with the Angels. He went 4 for 6 with his first home run. The guy never hits home runs. His first game back, he hits a home run.
What was funny about that is they were up 23-0 after 4 innings. So they really took their foot off the gas. I mean, they should have been rewriting the record books. Major disappointment those last.
I mean, that's a weird, did you guys see the UF LSU game today?
No.
UF won 20-2 or something. And it was one of those ones where it was a very pro LSU crowd and UF just kept hitting tanks deep into the game when they were already up by 17. And it was one where it's just the crowd was just oh, and that's how the Rockies Angels felt. And you reach a point where the game becomes so uncompetitive that it's yeah, sure, David Fletcher can hit a home run. This isn't a real Major League Baseball game anymore. It's one of those.
It's crazy stuff. David Fletcher, by the way, in the minors this season was batting .383 with a .909 OPS. Do we care about David Fletcher or even Mickey Moniak in deeper leagues? I feel like we continue to bring his name up.
There's only so much you can care about a pure platoon player, and I think Moniak has 8 plate appearances against lefties. He's been really good.
Yeah.
It's just who's the best platoon bat? Pure platoon bat. It's
Jock Peterson.
And he's not the best. He's probably not even Jock Peterson. So I think it's unlikely that Mickey Moniak matters much for fantasy, but remarkable story, if nothing else.
The Angels, for Fletcher, because it took a while for them to actually get Fletcher in the lineup after calling him up, right? They finally got him in a game, and he happened to have this big performance.
I couldn't confirm that, but go on.
Okay. So they acquired a couple infielders this weekend.
Yeah.
Eduardo Escobar from the Mets, which good news for Brett Beatty, and Mike Moustakas from the Rockies right after this game, actually.
Yeah, they got beat so bad they had to give up Mike Moustakas. That's actually the rule. If you lose by 23 runs and you have Mike Moustakas, you have to give him up.
It's like playing Pokemon or Magic or one of those card games where you collect the cards. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, that's good news for Nolan Jones that they traded Mike Moustakas. And obviously neither of those guys, Moustakas, Escobar, they can't play shortstop, but like they got a glut of infielders now that are almost interesting. And that probably makes none of them that interesting.
Mm-hmm. That is the Angels that we were talking about there. And David Fletcher, by the way, it looks like he was called up on Saturday and he started Saturday, Scott. So
okay.
Yeah.
I got that timeline wrong. My bad.
All good. Let's take our first break. And when we return, we'll take a look at all of the waiver wire pitchers here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
You gonna start the engine sometime soon, Erica?
Do you know the odds of all of us being here at this time? It's improbable, and yet here we are, together.
Hold on to your saddles.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today, and a quick reminder to sign up for our Fantasy Baseball Today newsletter. It is free, and you can find it at cbssports.com/newsletters. All you got to do is punch in your email address, hit subscribe, and you'll get those delivered to your email inbox every day for free. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that you've been working on some of those recently.
Yeah, I'm writing the Monday. I do like a big weekend recap with all the waiver wire and injuries and news and notes that you need to know about. And then Fridays, I do a little weekend preview, give you some streamers and stuff to keep an eye on. So yeah, I think it's worth reading. It's free.
Absolutely. If you are watching us live on YouTube right now, then you can take out your phone and scan the QR code. That will take you right to the website where you can once again sign up for free. And I do apologize once again because my voice just sounds absolutely terrible. So thank you for sticking around and fighting through this with all of us. Waiver wire pitchers from the weekend. Let's start with the first group here, which includes Brian Bayo, who has now turned in 4 straight quality starts. He introduced a new cutter this weekend. He threw it 9 times in that start. And honestly has been pretty good this year. 3.27 ERA, right around a strikeout per inning. Emmett Sheehan opens his career with back-to-back quality starts. He was up against the Astros, 6 innings of 2-run ball with 4 strikeouts and 12 swinging strikes. Taijuan Walker, he keeps on rolling. He's got a .69 ERA over his last 4 starts, right at a strikeout per inning. That coincides with a velocity jump that he's been pitching with recently. And then, of course, Griffin Canning was the other name that I had in there. So, Scott, how would you rank that group? Bayo, Sheehan, Taijuan Walker, and Griffin Canning.
Well, I think I'm ready to put Bayo number 1. I feel like the breakthrough is happening. It sounded like Chris had some doubts there that maybe he'll get into in a minute. But I've been kind of calling him a poor man's Framber Valdez, really going back to last year. And the kind of run Bayo has been on now. Poor man's Framber Valdez in the respect that like he's an elite ground ball generator who also gets whiffs at a nice rate, mostly because of his changeup, which is a good swing and miss pitch. He does have some walk issues. Framber Valdez did it first too. But that's really the only hang up for me at this point. Bayo's going deep into games. So 2 earned runs or less in 10 straight. 4 straight have been quality starts. So he's gone to 6 innings required in 4 straight. And I mean, at this point, other than the whip, the season numbers look good too for Brian Bayo. So he's number 1 for me. I'll put Emmett Sheehan 2. I'm not sure exactly. Well, you know what? The whiffs were better in this start against Houston. He only had 4 strikeouts in 6 innings, but he got 12 swinging strikes on 87 pitches, which is a nice rate. He got 6 on the fastball itself. He threw it 62% of the time. So that's not a great whiff rate. I expect him to get more swings and misses on the fastball. But overall, the whiffs were there. Better, more than in his first start. And I think there's still enough upside to stay enthusiastic about him at Sheehan. So he'll be number 2 behind Bayo. Number 3 is
Walker.
Taijuan Walker, yes, whose velocity was down closer to normal. Because remember, there was that big jump in velocity that preceded this an awesome 3-start stretch for Taijuan Walker. So this start over the weekend was the 4th start where he got good results, but the velocity was back down a little, which I thought was curious because I was putting a lot on that improved velocity, like up 2-3 miles per hour on all his pitches is what he was working with prior for those initial 3 starts. And then it kind of receded a little bit in this 4th one. So that's interesting. I'm not sure what to make of that, but overall, I still would say Taijuan Walker is trending up, and then Griffin Canning 4th.
Chris, anything that you wanted to add on Brayan Bello? You sounded a little skeptical.
I agree with the order. So I want to get that out first. And I also want to throw out there before we continue, there's another widely available pitcher who has not thrown a pitch in the major leagues, who I might like more than any of this group, but certainly more than 3 of the 4. And that is Tarik Skubal, who has made 2 starts at AAA, where we have StatCast data, and his fastball velocity is up 2 miles per hour. And that's been kind of the only weakness for him. And last year, his fastball played better. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully it's not a Reed Detmer situation. But to talk about Brayan Bello, he's 73% rostered, and that's too low. Go add him if he's available. I think there's no reason not to. That being said, he's the Framber Valdez comp is interesting. He's not as good at minimizing hard contact as Framber Valdez overall this season. You know, you look at the xWOBA on contact, basically right at league average. Strikeout rate, basically right at league average. Walk rate, just a tiny bit better than league average, by maybe 1 percentage point better than league average. So like you add it all up, and he has a 4.14 xERA compared to a 3.27 ERA. And I feel like I'd probably expect something like a 4 ERA the rest of the way. That being said, we're talking about a starting pitcher who's available at the end of June in 27% of leagues, who's been pitching in the majors the whole season. Of course, he's not a slam dunk to be an ace moving forward. So that shouldn't be the standard by which we judge him. I don't think this recent stretch is indicative of his talent level. I don't think the 3.27 ERA is necessarily indicative of what to expect moving forward. But I do think add him just in case, and especially like maybe that new cutter gives him a second swing and miss pitch. His slider has not been that at all so far, and so maybe he needs a new dimension, and maybe that can give it to him. And then, we kind of know what Taijuan Walker is. He's got a 1.71 ERA over his last 7 starts. He's got a 3.75 FIP. I think he's probably more like a 3.75 ERA guy, but that's useful. He's a solid stabilizing force. And as
a general rule, as it relates to exit velocity, you don't worry about it as much. Don't worry about it as much for an extreme ground ball pitcher like Bello as for the opposite. I mean, a harder hit ground ball is more likely to get past an infielder, but even if that happens, it's probably just a single.
Yes. And look, quality of contact metrics take a long time to stabilize. So that like strikeouts and walks and FIP, those traditional metrics, when we're talking about a 12-start sample size or whatever, those should take precedent. But what I'm looking for when I'm seeing a guy who has an ERA outpacing his peripherals, which is what we have with Brayan Bello, is he inducing a ton of soft contact? And that's not the case so far. And so, you know, he could outperform his peripherals, but I still think he's probably more like a high 3s ERA guy. But again, he's widely available. It's June 25th. That's not a reason to not add him.
Mm-hmm. Brayan Bello, by the way, up against the Marlins this week too. So a good matchup there for him. And the aforementioned Tarik Skubal is 54% rostered. He'll make another rehab start at AAA this week. Maybe he'll be back the week after that. Waiver wire pitchers part 2. Wade Miley continues to pitch well. He was up against the Guardians. He threw 6 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts, and his velocity remains up around between 1 and 2 miles per hour on his pitches since returning from the IL. Reese Olson has 8+ strikeouts in each of his last 2 starts. Josiah Gray, a solid bounce back start at the Padres, 5 1/3 shutout with 6 strikeouts and 13 swinging strikes. And Kyle Bradish continues to pitch well. 7 innings, 2 runs allowed, 7 strikeouts with 13 swinging strikes there. Scott, this next group, Kyle Bradish, Josiah Gray, Reese Olson, and Wade Miley. How would you rank them?
I would have them. I would have some of them ahead of Griffin Canning, for what it's worth. One of the ones I would have ahead of Griffin Canning from the previous group is Kyle Bradish, who has actually pitched a lot better lately than he's gotten credit for. He hasn't gotten a lot of wins, but it's not because he doesn't work deep into games typically. And now over his last 9 starts, he has a 2.92 ERA, 0.99 WHIP, 8.4 K per 9. But he's always been a guy who, like, the stuff rates better than the actual strikeouts. So I'm not even going to fixate on the 8.4 K per 9 so much. I think Kyle Bradish is pretty good, and he's doing it for a really good team. So that puts him number 1 of this group and ahead of Griffin Canning for me. Number 2 of this group is Reese Olson, who continued to pitch well, as he mostly has since getting called up. So what was interesting about this start, the whiffs were there, certainly 13 on 88 pitches, including 11 on the slider alone. He got 6 on his changeup last time. He barely threw the changeup. He threw it 7 times in this game. So it went from being a pitch that he was relying on heavily for swings and misses to just basically ditching it the next time out. And so that was an interesting choice, but in a way it's like, okay, well, he's not totally dependent on that one pitch. He's got a couple different weapons to work with, does Reese Olson. And his
fastballs are bad. That's the one, is that they're just, so far at least, they're getting hit really hard and they're getting no whiffs. And I would love to see him just like, let's see if we can throw the slider and change up. Yes, 65% of the time.
Sort of like what Griffin Canning's been doing recently.
Yeah.
But between the start to his major league career and the way his minor league career finished, which was with 3 dominant starts right before his call up. The overall ERA was bad, but he figured things out right before his
and
call
a bunch
up.
of strikeouts has been consistent.
Yeah. Yep. So, I wish he pitched for a team other than the Tigers, but Reese Olson's pretty interesting. Let's see. Next, I'm going to go with Wade Miley here. Actually, his velocity's been way up since coming off the IL, like 2 miles per hour on everything, and actually better than it's been in years too. It's not just like, oh, his velocity was down early this year, then went on the IL, and now it's back. It's like better than it's been in a long time. Doubt that's going to last, but it makes Wade Miley a little bit more interesting right now. And then Josiah Gray's 4th because he continues to exceed his peripherals, but not by as much as he used to. And I just think it's all going to fall apart sooner than later.
All right, fair enough. Waiver wire pitchers, part 3. This next group includes Johan Oviedo, who has thrown back-to-back quality starts. He had 14 swinging strikes against the Marlins this weekend. Clark Schmidt has pitched well over the past month or so. His last 7 starts, he's got a 2.19 ERA and a 1.16 WHIP. Dane Dunning, a quality start at the Yankees, 7 innings of 2-run ball with 2 strikeouts there. And Kenta Maeda, who did pitch well in his return at the Tigers, 5 shutout with 8 strikeouts and 11 swinging strikes. Chris, anyone stand out from this group? I know you mentioned Maeda, but also Dane Dunning, Clark Schmidt, and Johan Oviedo.
Maeda and Oviedo, I think, are the only 2 that I'm interested in, really. And I think I have more interest in Maeda than Oviedo. Oviedo's had these flashes this season, but you look at the overall numbers, and it's a 8.1 K per 9 and pretty mediocre to bad control. And I just don't see much to be excited about. With Maeda, at least it's kind of the Joey Votto thing where it's like, hey, maybe he can recapture what made him so special a couple of years ago. So I would at least give the guy who's been there a chance, especially because, 11 swinging strikes on 83 pitches. That's pretty good. 5 on the splitter. I'm not super excited about it, but it's worth a look.
And if you need a pitcher specifically for this week, I'll point out Kenta Maeda has the worst matchup by far in this group. He's at the Braves, but the other 3, Dunning is facing the Tigers, Clark Schmidt is at the Oakland A's, and Johan Oviedo is home against the Brewers. So
I would say Bradish is rostered in fewer leagues than 2 of them, Dunning and Oviedo, and he's at home. this week. He's got a 3.03 ERA at home, like a 4.60 ERA on the road. So if you're looking for a streamer, I'd prioritize Bradish over any of that group.
All right. And then in deeper leagues, Daniel Lynch, back-to-back quality starts for him. Luis Ortiz threw 8 innings of one-run ball with five strikeouts at the Marlins. A gentleman named Brian Hoeing has made 2 scoreless starts in a row now for the Marlins. And Ronel Blanco, who pitches for the Astros, he's allowed 3 earned runs or fewer in 3 of 4 starts. He was at the Dodgers, 6 innings, 3 runs, 6 strikeouts with 17 swinging strikes on 99 pitches. Scott, anything to see here with Ronel Blanco, Brian Hoeing, Luis Ortiz, and Daniel Lynch in deeper leagues?
Well, I think Ronel Blanco is interesting enough that he might matter in more than just deeper leagues. So he had 17 swinging strikes in this one. He had 16 swinging strikes 2 starts ago. The pitch he throws most often is a slider. It was responsible for 12 of his 17 whiffs here over the weekend. He throws it more than half the time. And it has a 47% whiff rate on the year. You won't find many pitchers whose primary pitch has a whiff rate as high as 47%. Most pitchers, their primary pitch is a fastball, and that might, if it's a good pitcher, it might have a whiff rate of 20 to 25%, So to have your main pitch, which you throw more than half the time, have almost a 50% whiff rate, I think Ronel Blanco might have some pretty good upside. Now, you look at his minor league track record, his walk rates were just awful. And this year, especially prior to being called up, he was walking way too many guys. And, maybe he'll never amount to much because of that. But I'm definitely interested in him. And he's been pitching well enough for the Astros that, if you wanted to speculate on a guy at the back end of your bench, I'd prioritize Griffin Canning over Ronel Blanco, but I don't think they're that far apart.
Mm-hmm. And Ronel Blanco, 3% rostered at the Rangers this week, is a very tough matchup. So maybe it's like a hold situation, but he does have RP eligibility on CBS. So specifically, if you play in a points league and you want to take advantage there, again, the name Ronel Blanco. Let's quickly run through some waiver wire hitters. We mentioned some of the corner infielders earlier on, and Ha-Sung Kim is someone I wanted to mention as a middle infield option, although he does have second, third base, and shortstop eligibility. He has homered in 3 of his past 4 games. He has led off 4 straight for the Padres. They are now batting Fernando Tatis second in the lineup. And Kim is only batting .251, but he does have 8 home runs and 13 steals. So some power and speed there. Chris, do you think Ha-Sung Kim should be rostered in more than 47% of CBS leagues?
I don't think so. I can't imagine he has much use in a points league, and there aren't that many. There probably aren't more than 47% roto leagues in CBS. I guess the number is even lower than that. So that's probably about right. Maybe even a little bit high.
All right. 2 names in 5 outfielder leagues. We mentioned last week, Alek Thomas got recalled by the Diamondbacks. He went 3 for 4 with his 4th stolen base on Sunday. And in 6 games since returning from the minors, he has 10 hits, 1 homer, and 1 steal. And Jose Siri went 3 for 4 with a home run on Friday and then hit another one on Sunday. He now has 14 homers and 7 steals this season. Scott, who would you rather have in a 5 outfielder league, Jose Siri or Alek Thomas? Or neither? It doesn't seem like you like either of these guys.
Well, no, I wouldn't consider either of them a high priority. Just double checking Siri's playing time, because that's always been an issue.
He's played 15 of the last 22 games. He started 14 of them in the month of June.
Yeah, I guess I'd lean Thomas there, though not with a lot of confidence. I'm just not sure that he's ever going to provide enough power to be, more than a 5 outfielder type. But I guess that's what we're talking about here, right?
Has Thomas played against any lefties?
He was out of the lineup for 1 game since coming back, so I just kind of assumed that was against a lefty. But
yeah, because that's the thing, is his numbers against lefties are just unplayably bad so far in the May. I want to say it's a sub 400 OPS against lefties, if I remember correctly, and so it's he's too young to write off completely. But yeah, in his career, 365 OPS against left-handed pitching in 135 plate appearances. So small sample size, but not nothing.
Mm-hmm. Alec Thomas was out of the lineup on Saturday, and it was against a bullpen game for the Giants. So maybe it was just like a routine day off for him.
Yeah.
In 2-catcher leagues, we mentioned the name a couple of weeks ago, and we just kind of brushed it off, but the guy's playing well. Patrick Bailey, 2 for 3 with his 4th home run on Friday. The expected stats look great for him. He's got a 35% line drive rate, according to Fangraphs, 91 mile per hour average exit velocity. He's 19% rostered. I think this is solely for 2-catcher leagues. I thought about dropping Shea Langoliers for him in a deeper 2-catcher league that I have, but ultimately I didn't do it because I feel safer about Langoliers' playing time rest of season.
So here's an interesting one, right? Like Patrick Bailey has a 4.03 BABIP right now. He is actually underperforming, his expected batting average. His expected batting average is 334. His actual batting average is 323, which is all to say that like, it's not just luck that he's hitting 323, but he's not going to keep hitting 323. He's earned a 4.03 BABIP, but he's not going to continue a 4.03 BABIP, as I think Jorge Alfaro has the highest BABIP over the last 5 seasons, and it's like 370 or something, and nobody else is above 350. So Patrick Bailey has earned what he's done so far, and also what he's done so far is not real. Both of those things are probably true.
Scott, we know Henry Davis is kind of the top option at catcher recently as a waiver wire ad, but let's say, you missed out on Henry Davis. Do you like Patrick Bailey more than like Bo Naylor or Gary Sanchez, 2 names we kind of talk about regularly?
Maybe more than Sanchez at this point, with the way Sanchez has cooled off. I think that never seemed like it was going to be a long-term answer for you. And I don't think Bailey's as good as he's shown recently either, but I think he's good enough to go ahead and plug him into your second catcher spot in 2-catcher league.
Okay. Would you have made the swap Langoliers for Patrick Bailey? I saw you, you're like, kind of make.
Yeah, no, yeah. I would have done that. I mean, Langoliers hasn't shown us much this year. I get what you're saying, but the Giants have other options. They have Blake Sable. They have Joey Bart, who's now toiling in the minors. But let me confirm this. I think Bailey provides more defensively than either of them do too, which should help him to stick in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And toiling is the right term for what Joey Bart is doing in the minors. He has a 458 OPS in the PCL right now.
Patrick Bailey, by the way, looking at some StatCast defensive numbers, his pop time is in the 98th percentile and his framing the 93rd. So yes, he does seem like he is a pretty good defensive catcher there for the Giants. Let's take our final break, and when we return, some news and notes, some starter sit questions. We'll do all of that right after this.
They say patience is a virtue, but for some things, we can't wait.
Welcome back, and let's hit the news and notes. Aaron Judge confirmed that he has a torn ligament in his right big toe and that he still has pain when he walks. And
this was one of those annoying ones where like it was like Aaron Judge confirms he has a tear in his toe. The Yankees said it was a sprain. It's like a sprain is a tear, guys. We didn't actually learn any new information. That doesn't mean it's not bad, and it doesn't mean that it may not limit him for the rest of the season and all of those things. But this wasn't new information. I saw a lot of people freaking out on Twitter, so I just wanted to go to Will Carroll's Twitter page. Will Carroll is an injury guy. He used to write for Baseball Prospectus. His pinned tweet is, "A sprain is a tear."
Okay. But
I just want to get that out.
They do call injuries sometimes sprains,
sure,
and they do call them tears sometimes. Sure. And the presumption is it's a more significant tear when they use the term tear instead of sprain, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know how the Yankees handle.
What we do know,
because some teams handle them differently. Some teams have like specific verbiage that they use consistently, and I don't know what the Yankees system is.
what we do know is that when he first suffered this injury, it was like, maybe he won't even require an IL trip.
Yeah.
And now they're talking like he might not make it back this year. So like we did learn whether they should have called it a tear all along or should have kept calling it a sprain. We did learn that it sounds like he's going to be out for a lot longer than we thought he was.
There was the Aaron Boone interview where he did that annoying thing where it was like Aaron Boone wouldn't confirm that he won't return this year, but he also said, I have not been told that he's not going to return this year. So it was like, the Yankees are frustrating with how they handle injuries. They tend to downplay them. The Mets also did this for a long time, and they should just be more honest with it. But I'm hoping it was just a little freak out.
So Brian Hawk, who covers the Yankees for MLB, this is something he tweeted out as in the aftermath of this press conference. Spoke to a sports orthopedic surgeon at NYU Langone, who has not treated Aaron Jones, but gosh, I can't even read properly. Spoke to a sports orthopedic surgeon who has not treated Aaron Judge, but he believes optimistically, my best guess would be that Judge could return 2 months from the date of the injury, which would be about August 3rd. So someone who didn't actually treat Judge, but he's saying optimistically August is what we're looking at for his return. I guess I should have just paraphrased to begin with. It would have saved us all a lot of time. Anyway, not good news.
No, it is not good news for Aaron Judge. Shane McClanahan threw from flat ground with trainers on Saturday, and it seemed to go well, but we still don't have an official update on whether he's going to make his next start or not. I assume we should just bench McClanahan unless we find something else out on Monday.
That's how I would approach it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cedric Mullins was activated off the IL this weekend. Marcus Stroman was removed from Sunday's start with a blister on his right index finger. He allowed 6 runs, 3 of those earned over 3 1/3 innings before leaving. Byron Buxton left Saturday's game with back spasms and was not in the lineup on Sunday. Max Muncy is expected to be activated from the IL on Tuesday. He's been out since June 13th with a strained left hamstring. Nathan Eovaldi said Saturday that a mechanical issue was the root cause in the decrease in velocity during his last start. The problem is that his velocity was also down on Sunday. His fastball was down 1.2 miles per hour, splitter down 1.2, the curve down 1.4. Are you guys more concerned that it's now 2 starts in a row, velocity down for Nathan Eovaldi?
Yeah, I'm more concerned. I would still put my concern level more in the moderate range than the severe range. I mean, he is getting pretty good results with this reduced velocity. And just because he's identified the problem doesn't mean he's fixed it yet.
Mm-hmm.
For what it's worth, Tyler Glasnow, 2 turns ago, he blamed a dip in velocity on a mechanical issue. And then he came back out here on Sunday, right? And looked great. He had his most dominant start of the season.
Yeah, first time he looked like Tyler Glasnow.
Yep. As we suspected, the Marlins are considering pausing Yuri Perez following his start next weekend to potentially give him an extended rest going into the All-Star break. He was amazing again on Sunday. He threw 6 shutout with 9 strikeouts and 15 swinging strikes up against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Michael Wacha had his start skipped Saturday due to shoulder fatigue, which might also explain his velocity being down in recent starts. James Paxton, please be okay, was removed from Saturday's start with knee soreness, but believes he'll be able to make his next scheduled start. Alek Manoah threw 74 pitches in his latest simulated game and will make at least 1 start in the minor leagues and returning to the Blue Jays.
All the waiver wire pitchers that we talked about so far, if I didn't need someone right now, I'd probably rather have Brian Bayo than him. I think I'd rather have Tarek Skubal. I don't know if I wouldn't rather stash Alek Manoah than any of the other guys we've mentioned so far today if I don't need someone. Like, the likeliest outcome is Alek Manoah stinks the rest of the season, whether it's in the minors or he gets called back up. But obviously he has more upside than any of those guys that we're talking about. I think he has more upside than Brian Bayo if he figures it out. So we'll see how the minor league session goes, but just want to throw that out there.
He is.
Alex, go
He
ahead.
has 72% rostered, which is well more than most of those guys. So I
Yeah,
think the
right.
majority agree with you, and I agree with you too.
Yeah, right around where Bayo is.
Yeah.
Eduardo Rodriguez felt fantastic following his live batting practice on Saturday. He threw about 50 pitches over 3 simulated innings. Riley Green took batting practice and did some straight line sprints at full speed Saturday. He remains without a timetable as he recovers from a leg injury. The Brewers had a scare when outfield prospect Sal Frelick fouled a ball off of his knee last Thursday, but he was back in their minor league lineup on Sunday. Nestor Cortez is roughly a week away from throwing off a mound. He's been out since early June with a left rotator cuff strain. Daniel Hudson will head to the Dodgers spring training complex in Arizona to throw an inning on Tuesday, and if all goes well, could be activated next weekend. Jack Flaherty was scratched this weekend due to hip discomfort, and as you guys mentioned earlier, the Angels acquired both Eduardo Escobar and Mike Moustakas this weekend. The Reds prospect Noelvi Marte was promoted from AA to AAA. He's had a pretty good start to his minor league season, and a couple names that went to the IL: Ben Lively with a right pectoral strain, Mike Yastrzemski with a hamstring strain, and Ramon Laureano with a fractured right hand he suffered on a slide. Starter sit these pitchers. On the surface, it looked like a solid start for Luis Severino up against the Texas Rangers this weekend. Obviously, it's a very tough lineup. He threw 6 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts, but he only had 4 swinging strikes.
Ugh.
He allowed 11 hard hits in this game. He
Yeah.
only threw 6 sliders. The effectiveness of that pitch has gone way down this season. Chris, are you benching Luis Severino at the Cardinals this week?
Yeah, both slider and cutter, which was a pitch that Severino introduced, I think, last season, have been pretty miserable for him so far. There's no way you can start him right now, even with this good start. Yeah, his swinging strike rate on the slider down to 23%, 11% on the cutter. Last year, it was above 40% with both. He's clearly still searching for it, and I'm not dropping him, but there's no way I'm starting Luis Severino right now.
The other name I wanted to mention here is Bobby Miller, who all of a sudden has got roughed up in his last 2 starts. He allowed 6 runs over 4 innings pitched this weekend up against the Houston Astros. Didn't really allow that much hard contact. His velocity was actually up in the start as well. Seems like might have been a little bit unlucky here, Scott. I think I would be okay starting him at the Royals this week, even though his last 2 starts have been pretty bad. That's Bobby Miller.
I mean, I feel better about him than I do Luis Severino. I think I'd rather sit him until I saw him bounce back. That's just kind of the way I'd normally play it. No, I don't know exactly what's going on with him. He's allowing weak contact. It was 85.2 was the average exit velocity in this one, 83.9 in the previous one. So I don't know what's going on with him. I'd rather sit him till I see him bounce back, but I'm pretty confident he's going to bounce back.
Again, that is Bobby Miller. Let's wrap up some rapid fire leftovers here. Pitching standouts from the weekend. Part 1, Jesus Luzardo, a dominant outing up against the Pirates, 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts. Logan Gilbert got back on track at the Orioles, 7 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts for him. And Lucas Giolito picked up 10 strikeouts over 6 innings. He allowed 3 runs. Only 1 of those was earned. Pretty tough matchup against the Red Sox there. Had 17 swinging strikes. Chris, anything to add on Giolito, Logan Gilbert, and Jesus Luzardo?
I can't really figure out Giolito. I can't figure out if he's good or bad or somewhere in between right now. It seems like it's kind of different every start. But Luzardo and Gilbert, I think, are good. I'm more confident in them than Giolito. But I think they're all in like the 40-ish range for me at starting pitcher.
Logan Gilbert, I think I have inside my top 25. That K to walk
Gilbert's
ratio,
a little higher, yeah.
Yeah, the K to walk ratio has been so good this year. It's just limiting the hard contact when he can. Other pitching standouts, part 2. Joe Musgrove had his best start of the season up against the Nationals, 7 innings of 1-run ball with 7 strikeouts. Justin Steele just continues to roll, this time against the Cardinals in London. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts there. And Tanner Bybee turned in his first quality start since May 27th. Scott, anything here on Bybee, Justin Steele, Joe Musgrove?
Nothing major. I think none of them did anything in this start that like changes my opinion of them. Bybee got a lot.
Go ahead, Scott.
Bybee got a lot of whiffs with a changeup, which is nice to see. But he walked 4, and we just got to see it more consistently from him. Steele continues to outperform his ratios. Musgrove, he seems to be getting better. Yeah, I'm searching for things to say. I think they all did fine.
The only thing I was going to ask is with Musgrove, we recently had a report that he's dealing with elbow bursitis. Would you use this as an opportunity to sell after his best start? Sell high, I guess.
Sure. But as always, it's got to be high, because how many people have somebody they could just plug in for Joe Musgrove?
Mm-hmm.
How many?
Yeah. Pitching standouts, part 3, Yusei Kikuchi, back-to-back quality starts. He has allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 6 straight up against the Oakland A's this weekend. 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts there. Tyler Glasnow, we mentioned he had a 12 strikeout effort on Sunday, 26 swinging strikes up against the Royals. And Yuri Perez, again, was dominant, 6 shutout innings, 9 strikeouts, 15 swinging strikes there. Chris, anything on Yuri Perez, Tyler Glasnow, Yusei Kikuchi?
I wrote a bunch about Yuri Perez in the trade values column, so you can get my thoughts there. They haven't really changed, but I would expect he's not really going to pitch over the next 3 weeks as the Marlins shut him down until the All-Star break. And then he's probably got 7 or 8 or 9 more starts after that. And I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be a top 25 starting pitcher in the rankings next year. He won't be 21 on opening day next year. That's the thing to keep in mind. You think it's impressive what he's doing. He turned 20 on April 15th of this year. For context, Jose Fernandez, his rookie season, turned 21 in July. Yuri Perez is 9 months ahead. And Jose Fernandez was better, and Yuri Perez is not going to be that good. But still, the context is remarkable. He's outrageously good. This was the first time Tyler Glasnow looked like Tyler Glasnow. In fairness, the Kansas City Royals look like the Kansas City Royals also, which certainly helps. They are kind of a disaster against right-handed pitching right now. And then Yusei Kikuchi's got this new curveball that he's throwing this year. It's a harder version of the curveball that he debuted with and then threw away when it was terrible. He's thrown it at least 20% of the time, 6 straight starts, and he has a 3.82 ERA over that 6-start span with 34 strikeouts and 30 2/3 innings. I'm always hesitant to buy in. I'm always hesitant to write Yusei Kikuchi off. I believe I have him ranked 80th at starting pitcher, and I feel comfortable with that.
All right. Corbin Burns, more struggles this weekend at the Guardians. He allowed 4 runs over 5 2/3, and he has now allowed 3 or more runs in 8 of 16 starts. He's got a 4.1 ERA. And look, if it was a tougher matchup this week, I might say, all right, you consider benching him, but he's at the Pirates, which is
starting him.
Yeah, I think you just got to start him.
You're not even considering it.
No, you're not. And what's strange is, he seemed like he got his season back on track statistically for a while there, and then it's kind of stumbled again here in his last couple starts. The stumble has come as his cutter velocity has gotten back to where it was last year. So those velocity issues Corbin Burns was having at the start of the year completely gone now. So it's a little surprised the timing of this most recent stumble, but pretty much all of the elite class of starting pitchers have been a little less than elite this year. They've all kind of underachieved.
That is fair. One last note here on a hitter. Anthony Santander, he has homered in 5 of his past 6 games. He's batting .271 with 14 homers and an .836 OPS. Scott, would you say it's time to move Santander up the rankings?
Yeah, I might need to move him up a bit. I had him outside of my top 60 before this. I mean, look, he was on pace for less than 20 homers with a bad OBP. And, he's just, I don't see him getting back to the 33 home runs he hit last year, even now. The data's worse. He's striking out more than he did last year. But, he plays every day for a good offense and is probably like a number 4 outfielder in fantasy.
We did have some interesting bullpen happenings this weekend, but pretty late here in the podcast. I'm just going to ask you guys to rank this group of 4 if you're looking for saves. I think they're all kind of emerging as the closers for their respective teams. Scott McGough, Jordan Hicks, Justin Lawrence with the Rockies, and Hunter Harvey with the Nationals. How would you guys rank that group?
I think you could probably throw Trevor May in there, and I think him and Lawrence are at the bottom. Hicks has 4 saves in the past 7 games, which is kind of wild. It looks like he's the guy with Helsley out. But I would probably prioritize McGough and Harvey over Hicks in the long term. But Hicks sure looks like a solid source for the short term.
I mean, I'd go Hicks over Harvey. Just doesn't seem like it's becoming more clear that it's becoming more clear that they're transitioning away from Finnegan.
Yeah, that's yeah.
But so Harvey's gotten each of the last 3 saves for the Nationals. Only 2 have come in June. Like the third happened way back in May. So he's just not getting many chances here. And so I'd go McGough 1, Hicks 2, Harvey 3, Lawrence 4. Just stay away from Trevor May. That's
I think that's
disaster.
Probably. McGough has 4 saves in the last 5 days.
Yeah,
and they're a good team.
He's pitching really well. I know he got off to a bit of a rocky start this year, but over the past 2 months, he's really turned it on. Would you guys be okay dropping Jason Adam for any of those names? He just looks like he's back into the 8th inning role for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, except for Trevor May.
Okay. Let's wrap up with to stream or not to stream, and we'll start with Monday. It's a very short slate of action. I think Reed Detmers up against the White Sox is probably the best name on this list, and don't love anyone else.
Yeah, he's fine, and no one else is.
Yeah.
Who did we say was fine?
Reed
Detmers.
Yes, he is fine.
Yeah. Matthew Boyd at Texas. It's a really tough matchup. Trevor Williams at Seattle.
As a streamer, he's fine.
Yeah. On Tuesday.
Detmers, to be clear.
On Tuesday, I think Garrett Whitlock stands out against the Marlins. Gavin Williams up against Kansas City. I think that's pretty good. Brian Wu versus the Nationals.
Yeah, those are great. Those are all better than Detmers.
And Julio Teheran at the Mets, I think, is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tuesday's a pretty good day of streaming. All right, we're going to wrap there. Thankfully, it's over for me. Thank you all for sticking around and fighting through and listening. We do appreciate it, but I know it was kind of a mess here today. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.